Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the exalted one, the worthy one, the perfectly enlightened one. I have already explained the Vipassana practice up to the Sila Visuddhi. Sila Visuddhi means the purification of conduct. Then we come to the second part of the Vipassana practice called Chitta Visuddhi, purification of mind. So every time when I introduce the part by part, I also introduce the practice little bit. Those who prefer to do breathing meditation, mindful breathing, when you breathe in, breathe out, say one in mentally. When you breathe in, breathe out, say two in mentally. Breathe in, breathe out, say three in mentally. And start from one again. After a long practice, you can let go the counting and just be aware of your in and out breath. Those who prefer to notice the rising and falling of the abdomen, when the abdomen rises, say rising. When it falls, when it is falling, say falling. Rising, falling. Rising, falling. You can also do mental notes, or you can just be aware of the rising and falling of the abdomen. So either object, either breathing or the rising, falling, one of these two you can select, whichever you prefer. Now I am going to give instructions from the purification of mind, that part. Why the meditator concentrate on rising and falling of the abdomen? Wandering thoughts may occur. Well, while practicing, your mind might wander here and there. If you remember something, say, in mentally remember, and come back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. If you remember something, say, remember, come back to the rising and falling abdomen. Rising and falling of the abdomen. If you are thinking, saying, mentally thinking, come back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. Or either the breathing, in and out breath. The same way, if you have desire, notice it twice or thrice and come back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. If you have desire, say desire, come back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. If you have angry thoughts, say anger, and come back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. If pain occurs any part of your body, do not move. And just keep on contemplating. For example, when you sit longer, like half an hour more than that, don't move your legs, stay still, and don't stretch your leg. But if the pain rises, notice that place and keep contemplating, paining until the pain goes back completely and come back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. At the beginning of the practice, the mind wanders a lot, but when the momentary concentration of the meditator's mind has become strong, when you develop concentration, and it becomes gradually stronger. The noticing becomes well concentrated. Hence, when noticing of the objects, the abdominal movement, hearing, or any sensation, the meditator feels that his thoughts now appear as if falling upon these objects, as if striking at them, as if confronting them again and again. When you keep on noticing, when you notice thoughts, when you notice sound, when you hear a sound, just notice, say hearing, come back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. If you have continuous sound like rain, the sound of the rain, just ignore and just come back to rising and falling. But if you have a sudden distraction, somebody opens a door, something, when you hear, say hearing, come back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. Now while practicing, when you have good thought, just notice that. When you have a desire, say desire, come back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. If the mind wanders, say wandering, come back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. When you practice for a longer period, for many hours, gradually your mind is more concentrated on the object. When you will feel when the abdomen is rising, as if that mind is holding into, attached to that, and more bind together, and as if the objects, as if the thoughts, as if the sound has just coming in front of you, like confronting you, like so your mind gradually get concentrated on the object, and you will feel there will be not much wandering thoughts. The mind will be at a still place connected to the object. At this point, his mind will no longer go elsewhere, only occasionally, and he will be able to notice those stray thoughts at the very beginning. So, gradually, the mind decreases of the wandering thoughts will gradually fade away, and you will find the mind is more connected to the object or concentrate on the object. Even while noticing rising and falling, there will be very less wandering thoughts, but when you just notice the thought, they all disappear, and you can easily come back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. While the yogi or the meditator is engaged in noticing the rising and falling of the abdomen, the noticing mind will close in upon and fix on whatever object is being noticed. So gradually you will feel your mind is more fixed on the object that you notice. Or for example, when it is rising, you will feel the mind is more fixed on the rising part, and it doesn't go, wandering thoughts will gradually fade away, and mind is more attached to the object that you are practicing. At this point, there arises in him an uninterrupted succession, the concentration of mind lasting for a moment. So you will feel the mind, for example, when you notice the rising and falling of the abdomen, when it rises, you will feel the mind is holding into that object and stays for a few seconds. So the concentration is more become still. Whatever object noticed, this is called Chitta Visuddhi, the purification of the mind. So this is called when the mind is more connected to the object and stays still for a few seconds, that we call that part is that kind of understanding that when the yogi get that kind of, when the meditator get that kind of understanding, the meditator has come to the level of the Chitta Visuddhi, that is the purification of the mind. This is called the Upachara Samadhi. In English is called access concentration. It has only momentary duration. Its power of resistance fixes the mind immovably on the object noticed. There are two kinds of concentration: access concentration and absorption. Absorption is that when you practice breathing meditation for a longer period, mind get absorbed to the concentration level, it lasts longer. But in our practice, we introduce momentary concentration. So the meditator doesn't have to wait until you reach the highest level of the absorption, going to deep concentration that lasts longer. But taking a momentary concentration, one can turn the practice into insight meditation a lot and realize nirvana or nibbana faster. Those who prefer to go into absorption, there is no harm. They can keep on practicing breathing for a longer period. If they are lucky, they will reach the jhanic level, is called the absorption level. First jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. So jhanas in Pali they call jhana, in English they call it absorption. The momentary concentration occurs uninterruptedly. Whatever objects notice, once notice one object, another will appear. When notice that object, another object will appear. So whatever the objects one notices, the force of concentration of the mind uninterruptedly engaged in noticing remains on the same level. So when one object arises, when one thought arises, when the yogi, when the meditator notices that, it holds on to that object for a few seconds. When that disappears, another thought arises. When he notices that thought, it also holds on to that object for a few seconds. So, whatever thoughts that arise and pass in a way, the holding of the object for a few seconds lasts in the same level. Yeah, what is meant here is, just as the first object is noticed with a certain degree of concentration, so the second, third and other subsequent objects are noticed in each case with the same degree of concentration. This momentary concentration of uninterrupted flow will not overwhelm by any mental hindrances. Now we come to the other level of insight practice. This is called the Ditti Visuddhi, or the purification of view. Analytical knowledge of body and mind. And the yogi will be able to understand the body and mind very clearly. Yogi means the meditator. When you reach to this level, one comes to understand the mind and body very clearly. When notice rising of the abdomen, one sees that the rising is one process and the falling downward of the abdomen is another process. So when you come to the level of purification of the mind, that gradually you improve some kind of understanding much higher than before. You will understand when, for example, when you are noticing rising and falling of the abdomen, when it rises, you understand rising part is one level and falling part of the abdomen is another. So each and every one is not connected. So it rises, then it ceases. When it falls and it ceases. Understand? So rising part is another, falling part is another. So you will come to know this rising and falling movement very crystal clear as is two different movements. Sitting is another, touching of the body is another. In this way, the meditator comes to know each and every mind and body. As a separate process, the knowing of the rising movement is one process and the falling of the abdomen is another process. So one understand sitting is another process and the contact of the body to this chair or the seat is another. So you will come to know as two processes. When looking at something, one comes to know the eye is another, the visual object is another, and the vision is another. You see, when we see something, we just look at something, we just see the pictures. But here, when you improve your knowledge or wisdom, you will come to know, understand, vision is another part. The object is a separate thing. And each and every one has separate processes. And knowing of the object, whether it is green color, blue color, or the shape of the object is another. So understanding is another, seeing is another, object is another. You will understand there are as three separate processes. This is all practical experience. For the ordinary people is very hard to understand. You have to practice and experience yourself. Thus he clearly sees body is a separate thing, knowing is another separate process. When one intends to lift one's foot, he comprehends the desire to lift is another, lifting part is another, moving the foot forward is another, and the lowering of the foot is another process. Keeping the foot on the ground is another. process. So, while doing walking meditation, when you do walking meditation, you with open eyes, you have to be aware of your feet. So, you start from the beginning, like beginners can do left, right. But gradually you can increase lifting, keeping, lifting, moving, keeping. And in Thailand, Upper Thailand, in Chiang Mai, in one of the meditation centers, I remember, they also notice as 6 steps. Heel up, lifting, forwarding, lowering, touching, pressing. If you prefer to go into that level, you can also do so. But lifting, you will understand, for example, if you do lifting, moving, keeping, intention of lifting the foot is another, moving forward is another process, moving down, lowering is another process, and touching the ground is another process. You will see, you will understand mentally each and every movement are as separate processes. But we, in the ordinary world, we don't see that. We just lift the foot, lift the arm, move. We lift the foot and move forward. That's only we understand. But in here, when you improve knowledge, you will understand this one is separate. Movement, separate. Understanding this movement is a separate process. Lowering is a separate process. Touching the feet on the ground is a separate process. Very crystal clear. So it's not one movement. There are so many things are happening when you move the feet. The desire to lift is another, lifting is another, moving the foot is another, and the lowering the foot is another process, keeping the foot on the ground is another process. When a bird is crying, one hears a series of sounds such as ka, 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 etc. He notices that the hearing the sound is another process. At this time, the meditator comes to know when he breathes, the abdomen rises and the knowing of it. Besides these processes, there is no knower or person, I or ego that exists within. Now, when you practice insight meditation, when you improve your mind up to a certain level, when you hear, for example, in Sri Lanka like places, in the silence, you hear the crows are everywhere. For example, when you hear the crow crying, when you hear the sound of the car, it's not a one sound. You will hear ka, 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 ka. So many sound breaks you will come to know. So you will see when you move your arm, as intention to move is another, moving little forward is another, again the move little forward is another. So you will experience different movements of so many movements when you move and bring the arm down, so many movements occur. So you can identify very clearly each and every movement as separate processes. And you will also come to understand intention to move, and then the hand moves, and all these things are happening as separate processes, and you will understand there is no person, there is no I or ego who does these things. There is no soul, there is no person exist here. What we call a person, I, me, ego, there is no such a person exist. But these processes are just moved. Intention arises and then the hand moves and moves. So you come to know very crystal clearly there is no a person called I or ego or self exists within his body. This understanding comes from the direct experience of noticing, not from ratiocination. Not from ratiocination. I mean, that means not thinking. So this understanding comes from the direct experience of noticing, not from the ratiocination. That means this is not a person is thinking of these things, but you will understand directly and through your direct experience. So we stopped at this point today. We'll meet you again next time. Thank you for listening. I hope that you will practice this and that you'll be able to understand what the Buddha said more than 2,600 years, and you will come to understand. If you really practice this, you will understand the Buddha's teaching more deeply, and it will help you to purify your mind and to attain realization called the Sotapanna stream winner, or Sakadagami once returner, or Anagami non-returner, Arahant, fully enlightened one. This is the only path one can practice and reach that point. May you all be free from all illnesses. May the entire world be filled with love and peace. May all beings be well, happy and peaceful. Thank you.